Hi, I'm Cheryl Jackson. Welcome to Your Voice. Today we're talking about how to talk to your kids. It sounds so basic and you're probably thinking, I talk to my children all the time, so no problem, right? But are you communicating effectively? Do you feel sometimes that you're talking at your child instead of with? Is it sometimes like pulling teeth to get the information you need? And when you challenge your kids on this, do they tell you it's because you don't listen anyway? If this sounds like some of the conversations that go on in your household, don't panic. It happens to all of us. But we can learn to talk to each other in a way that is open, honest, respectful, and gets results. I'm joined by two people in studio who can help us get there. Jennifer Kolari is a child and family therapist and author of Connected Parenting: Transform Your Challenging Child and Build Loving Bonds for Life. Also in studio is Catherine Wakelin. She's a professional facilitator, a consultant, and author of the book Talk About Anything with Your Kids, an easy guide to great conversations. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here today. Now, before we get started, you both have children, right? So I'm assuming what we're talking about has been home tested.
Oh, right.
True?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, so we have confidence in this. Why is it so hard to talk to our kids sometimes?
You know, I think sometimes our own agenda really gets in the way. So if our children are upset with us or they're feeling sad about something, it's hard for us to hear those things. So we fix and we try to solve the problem too quickly. And then our child experiences that we're not listening to them. We're not giving them that moment to really say what they're feeling. So.
Well, the other thing you have to remember too is that we expect our children to grow and develop and change over the years, but not many parents expect that they're going to have to do the same. And the way we communicate needs to evolve over the years.
What are the most common problems, Catherine, that parents face in their communication with their kids?
Well, they get stuck in a style. I like to say when parents have a baby, a very young baby, it's like a monarch phase. The child just gazes up at them with that loving look, and everything they say goes.
That's
and
the best.
It's the best. They're in
Right.
total control, and it really doesn't last very long. As soon as that child starts speaking a little bit, parents tend to move into what I like to call the dictator phase. And again, it's not a bad thing, it's just the way it is. We have to teach our children and keep them safe, and we're constantly telling them, do this, don't do that, it's time for this, go to bed now, eat this, don't touch that, you'll get hurt. And we're constantly issuing instructions. And parents tend to get stuck in that dictator phase. But kids continue to grow and develop, and they develop ideas of their own, and they have thoughts and experiences that the parents don't know about. And then they hit a time when they need their parents to take a more facilitative approach.
Well, why do parents get stuck there?
Because
Is it easy? Does it work?
It's easy. It's very effective with toddlers and small children. You know, you say don't do that, and it works to a point. But at the point where you start to get conflict, where kids start to push back,
Well, that can start really early.
It can start.
That can start when they're
How
one.
old?
Absolutely. As soon as they have an opinion, something's not working, they'll let you know. Either if they don't have language, they'll let you know with tantrums, with crying, behaviors of communication. It's so interesting what you're saying about babies, because when I talk to parents about a technique called the CALM technique, which is what I teach parents to help them communicate, is when you have an infant, what happens is when you interact with that baby and you're saying, oh my goodness, look at you, there are neural pathways forming in the brain. And the infant brain uses the adult brain to regulate itself and to get organized. So without an adult brain, the brain won't develop at all.
Right.
So it's quite a natural thing to be very in tune and to, it's called mirror our babies. And then around language acquisition, we start to tell them what to do, and that what they're thinking and what they're feeling isn't necessarily what we think
So
they
why
should.
do we lose that at some point then, or do we?
I think it's natural. I think when language becomes the primary way that children communicate, we tend to use language to communicate back. And it's all about message delivery. So if, let's say your babies come out of the bath and they're freezing cold, and they're 4 months old. You're not going to say, oh, you're fine, cut it out, you'll be okay. You're going to say, oh my goodness, look at you, you're cold. When your 2-year-old gets out of the bath and is screaming, I don't want to get out, I'm cold.
Right.
You say, you're fine, here you go, here's a towel, you're going to be okay. But they're feeling like they're not going to be okay. So they're
Right.
sending a message, and we're not hearing the same message. So we bounce back a different message
Do
from
we
what they're
expect
sending
them to
us.
be able to do we expect them to be able to listen to us say you're okay?
I think so.
They'll
Absolutely,
accept that.
But we think about it, when we're upset,
Right.
when we've had a terrible day and we go home to our spouse and say, oh, you won't believe what happened today, this person did that. And if our spouse is saying things like, well, that's nothing, wait till you hear what happened to me, or why don't you just do this or
Right.
that, we're left with a feeling of, oh, well, that's not what I wanted.
Well, Catherine, how do we know when we're making mistakes as parents in our communication?
but you know, we've got the best feedback mechanism possible. No.
Oh,
Which
they
is-
roll their eyes.
Which
They
just
walk
what's
away.
coming back from the kids. I like to say the first shock for a parent is the first time before children even have language, they turn their head away from the spoon of strained peas. You know, that first act of defiance, it's usually shocking. And then also as a toddler, the first time that defiant, full stance, full-fisted no to what we say is shocking to parents. But those are very obvious signals, but there are lots of subtle ones. And when your child starts arguing with you more and pushing back, it's a sure sign that the communication isn't balanced sufficiently for the child.
All right, well, how do we start improving our conversations with our kids?
Well, the first thing I like to say to parents is, coming out of the dictator phase, it's a lot of talking and not a lot of listening. You know, a lot of observing of your child, but not necessarily a lot of listening. So parents have to learn to give their children a voice. Just like the show's called Your Voice, we have to give our children a voice. It's not a lot of parents push back and say, well, if we give them too many choices, we'll never, get out the door. We're not saying give them inappropriate choices, but give them age-appropriate choices so they feel they have a say in things. And then the parent has to be willing to let their child negotiate. I think that's one of the most underrated skills we can teach our kids, is how to negotiate things.
Right. Well, now you come at this from a facilitator point of view, right? I
That's
mean,
right.
you worked with adults, or you still do?
I still do.
Right. How does that transfer to kids then? Is it the same as being in a boardroom, or?
The issues are the same. People often have me come into a group that's working on something very difficult. It could be a merger, a project that's gone off the rails. And the issues are the same. You can see all of the dysfunctions in the group are the same in the home. When people start not behaving well in meetings, start pushing back, start being very argumentative, being passive aggressive, pulling back, it's all the same thing. It all comes back to a desire to be heard and understood. Okay. And when people, adults and children alike, don't feel that they're being heard or understood, they start to show signs.
Okay.
The signs may be a little different, but the underlying cause is the same.
All right. Now, Jennifer, you talk in your book, and I know in your practice a lot about mirroring. Can you describe what that is and how that fits into all of this?
Well, and mirroring is really, it's a therapy technique, actually. It's not really a parenting technique at all. It's a bit counterintuitive, because when someone's angry or when someone's upset, you feel like you should be talking them out of it, or you feel like you should be making them feel better.
True.
But what happens is they keep sending the same message. I'm upset that this is happening. If we send the message back, oh, but it's going to be okay, we'll fix it for you, they're still not able to get that message out. So it really has to do with empathy. It has to do with really deeply listening and showing real compassion.
Can you give me some examples?
Absolutely.
So I understand
let's take a little one who doesn't want to put a raincoat on. Here's a classic. So it usually goes something like this. Sweetie, put your raincoat on. No, I don't want to put my raincoat on. And we say, honey, put your raincoat on, please. No, I'm not putting it on. And let's say they have to have the raincoat on, because obviously you could be picking your battles, but let's say you've decided they have to wear it. And we start saying, put it on, or I'll count to 3, or why do you always do this to me? And you're running around trying to get her into the raincoat as you're chasing her around the house. That's usually how that goes, and it usually escalates. She has an agenda. I'm not wearing that. You have an agenda. Yes, you are.
Right.
And off it goes.
Right.
So if you were to mirror that, you would take a second, you'd take a breath, and you go, you know what? Raincoats are bunchy, and they're hot, and they don't feel very good. And you're 4 years old, and you feel like you should be making your own decisions. Suddenly you're getting this. You're getting nodding. And what's really interesting is about 85 to 90% of the time, if you mirror properly, it will diffuse the child right away. In fact, little opiates and endorphins release in the brain when you mirror properly.
It almost sounds like a door is being, like a floodgate is being opened so that they can go.
It's being heard.
Right.
It's exactly what.
Well, is that something you can learn, or is this something that you are sort of naturally good at or not?
You can absolutely learn it. I teach it to parents all the time, and it's very, it takes some practice.
Yes.
And it certainly sounds simple, but when you practice it, you'll find that it's a little more complicated.
All right.
But it's very powerful.
I think most parents do, though, when they want to start a conversation with their kids, they ask a question. Yeah, I mean, I know, how was your day today? Or, what did you do at school today? Those sorts of things. Does that work? Catherine, I'll ask you first.
I get a lot of questions about the after-school question. How was school?
Right.
Fine, or they'll say something negative. And it's usually the same response to that question. And I say, that's a bad question, because that's equivalent to how are you, which is basically a form of hi, how you doing?
Yeah.
Right? There's just no response other than fine or lousy. It's a one-word question, so it's not a good question. And often kids, when they come home from school, it's probably one of the worst times to ask them how their day was. They need to come in and wind down, just like adults do. The last thing you do when you get home is want to start talking a lot. We need a little wind down time. So I think it's better to ask more specific questions, you know, of your child, depending on their age.
Right.
About something specific that you know is happening at school, or about one of their friends. Say, you know, I haven't heard you talk about Bobby for a while. You know,
Right.
what's he up to these days?
Okay.
Which forces them to give you an answer that they can flesh out.
Yeah, well, I'll give you one quick example, and then we'll go to a question from a parent. But when my son was young, in maybe grade 1 or 2, I would say, "Do you have any homework?" at the end of the day, and he'd say, "That's the wrong question to ask." He'd say, "The question is, what homework do I have?" Because he had homework every night. So he was very annoyed by the question, actually, and if I found a way to ask it properly, he would answer me.
I'd say a better way to do that is around the dinner table.
Sure.
And just ask the kids, just as you're eating and casually, so you're not, you know, eyeballing them, and just say, you know, especially with younger kids, you know, what was the best thing that happened today? And what was the worst thing that happened today?
All right.
And that's going to give you great information. The middle part, you don't care about as much.
All right, well, we sent our producer Karen out to ask parents if they had any questions for you on our show, and we heard something from one mom, so let's have a listen.
Hi, my name's Andrea, and I have a son, Nicholas, and he's in grade 6, and every day he comes home from school, and I ask him, how was your day at school? And basically I just get, oh, it was good. And I'm trying to break through that, and I need a little bit more information from him. I'm asking you, how can I do that? How can I facilitate that any better?
All right, and I think that mother's son is a bit older. I don't think he's that young, but could you give me some specific questions she might ask?
One of the things we tend to do is we machine gun question. How was your day? What's going on? What's happening? And when someone talks to you like that, it makes you back up. And older children often give you the half answer, like they can't even be bothered making words come out of their mouth. So, I mean, the best thing to do, if you've been doing that a lot and your child is not answering, just say, you know, every day I ask you how school is, and every day you say it's fine, and I just feel like I'm not answering the question right. I'm not asking the question properly. How can we start a conversation so I can hear more about what's going on in your life because I love you, and just see what happens then. Just sort of more open-ended and more from an empathy point of view versus an information gathering session.
Okay.
And I'd say for any parent, you think through a little bit. What do you really want to know? Do you want to know if they're struggling with the subject? Do you want to know if it's the child has developing friends or has social problems, or if there's bullying in school, if there are issues? What are you really after? And understanding what you want to know allows you to frame a question in a better way. So if you think they might be struggling with the subject and you don't know about it, well, how about asking a question like, you know, what subject is toughest this year? And and then they'll say, oh, it's science. And then you can say, well, why is that? Is it the teacher? What are you studying? You know, what are you finding tough about it? And then you can delve into really what you want to know. So if it's everything, over time, again, I wouldn't do it all in one night, but think about what you really want to know about your child's day and find a way to ask probing questions to get to that.
Well, I should add too that what's really important is, and it's important to know why you're asking the question, but sometimes if your agenda is driving the questions, kids are so smart. I know where you're going with this line of questioning. So you really want to make sure you're also checking your agenda and being really empathic and taking it from the point of view, I want to understand my child. I really want to understand.
And it sounds like honest as well.
Oh,
both of you are
absolutely.
saying, you know, if you want to know about something specific,
Kids
ask
are
about
so
that.
smart.
Don't try to
know.
get around it. In terms of when is the right time to talk to your children, you said probably after school isn't the best time to drive home some of these questions.
In the car is sometimes a
In the
great
car?
time. You know, lots of great conversations
Captive
happen in the car.
audience,
Well, the kids talk more in the car for some reason. I don't know why,
I know
unless there's
exactly why
friends
it
in the
is.
back seat.
Why? Do you know why they talk in the car? Because you're not looking at them.
Ah, that's a good
See,
point.
that's a facilitator
I've heard that
trick.
before, too.
We're comfortable.
We do
Yeah,
that
that's
as a
right. Not eye
facilitator,
to
as
contact.
we use a flip chart, yes, to record things, also to prove we've heard, but the other thing you'll find is that people will talk to the chart instead of looking at me in the eye, and it's much more comfortable if they're talking about something that's a bit difficult. In the car, your eyes are not looking into the eyes of your child.
That's interesting.
And it's a little bit safer environment, and that's why, especially with older children, great
And
place for tough talk.
Bedtime's a wonderful time to talk to your kids.
All right. What about dinner time? I know we try to eat dinner together every night, but I actually don't feel like it's a great time to sometimes bring up things that might be a little bit dicey. Is it or isn't it?
I mean, it's lovely to have positive, pleasant conversations. The more positivity goes around with eating and that family time, I think, is important. But it's often not a time where kids want to talk about difficult things or they're embarrassed because their siblings are there, and it may not be a time to really get into too many too many issues. Keep it light, keep it open-ended. What's funny today? Tell me something hilarious that happened. Just sort of keep it that way.
Now, when topics are difficult, you know, maybe something has happened at school or there's an issue with a friend, or I mean, it could be countless things. How do you get your child to participate in a conversation they know is probably going to be unpleasant?
Well, the only way you're going to do that is by being a good listener. If you're not being a good listener, they're not going to talk to you. If they sense too strong an agenda on your part, they're going to close down. So if it's coming from an empathic place and you really want to understand them, they'll talk to you. And you have to sort of, you know, openly, you know, be open-ended. I guess you don't want to ask questions they can answer yes or no to. And then just really show them that you're working hard in that conversation. There's nothing more that you want than to understand their point of view. And that's absolutely a delicious feeling. It's a wonderful feeling.
And I couldn't agree more. I've run focus groups with kids, asking them just simple questions. What do you and do you not like about how your parents talk to you? And what do you and do you not like about how your parents listen to you? If you could change one thing, what would it be? And if that thing changed, how would your life change? And in almost every case, the dominating thing that kids say is they can't get their parents' undivided attention. So they're competing, their parents doing the dishes or saying, I'll talk later, or they can't get the full attention of their parents. So their parents are kind of listening. You know how we say people do things off the side of their desk? Parents are listening off the side of their desk. And children take that very seriously. What we say is almost less important than how we behave in our actions. The observation of what we do and how we act is so critical. So if how we're acting is, I really don't have any time to listen to what you say, it won't be long before that child turns to their peers for their primary listening audience. And once that starts, it's hard to get it back.
The other flip side to that is if you're over listening like this, what's wrong? I know something's wrong. Then they're going to be like, whoa, okay, mom is either too upset or she's not going to be able to handle what I have to tell her. So they either protect the parent or it just adds to how overwhelmed they're feeling. So you really have to have a caring but neutral stance in a way.
Right, but what if your conversation, what if it's not neutral? What if you have something that you need your child to do or change in their behavior or at school, something like that, and you know that you have a direction that your child, that you really want them to follow?
Right. So I teach something called the CALM technique, which is really how to use the mirroring technique in a conversation. So the first thing you do is you look at them and you focus, and you look at them and you put everything down that's around you. And then you match their affect. This is a very, very important thing. So there's active listening and effective listening that's out there, and that's when you say, you know, it must be very difficult for you, or it sounds like that must be hard. That's an okay technique. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it has those observatory words, kids go, oh, she's trying to figure something out here. She thinks she knows something about how I'm feeling. So you really want to match their affect. So let's say your child comes home and they've been bullied, and they're really upset about it, or they're angry with you because you've asked them to do something that they don't want to do, get off the computer or something. You have to match their affect and say, you're having a great time on this game. You love this game. You're at level 6. It took you forever to get there. I totally get why you want to stay on this computer, but you know what, sweetie, here's the problem. So you start with matching their affect and the urgency of the message that they're giving you. And once you do that, it's remarkable how quickly they will calm down. And you don't need to follow your child around and do a therapy session. It's 2 or 3 statements that are really empathic like that. And often they'll say, okay, well, what do you want me to do? Or they'll do it.
That sounds so easy.
It does. It does, actually. It's hard to do, but it's remarkable how quickly, it's very diffusing. They'll go, okay.
Right,
and they'll suddenly go and do it.
Catherine, what about you? When do you think the conversation is over? I mean, as a parent, when you've listened, let's say you've listened, and you've made a decision, is that okay?
It can be okay. I mean, it's very dependent on the situation and the age of the child. I like to say, if the parent is showing that they're listening, like I say, our hearts listen better than our ears do. If you're trying to understand your child and not just try to get what you want done, that there's a balance. Again, acknowledging, say, I understand that you don't mind that your room is a disaster. But however, I need you to understand that I do mind. So instead of saying, you have to do what I want, say, how can we meet in the middle? There's got to be something that makes us both satisfied with the situation. So what ideas have you got? You know, tell me what some ideas you may have. Yeah. And then that allows you to negotiate. Especially as your children get older, they really enjoy the negotiation process. In fact, I always tell adults who are in sales, if you really want to learn negotiation well, take a child to a toy store. then watch a master at work. But in the home, you need to give your child a voice and some options. Parents often come in and we're tired and we're also not at our best at the end of the day. And this is when a lot of conflict happens at the end of the day. So yes, there's backpacks and shoes everywhere and they're in my way and it's irritating me. But does it have to be all about the fact that I want them cleared away right this instant? I've taught my kids where I'll say, okay, there's stuff everywhere and it's really bugging me. So you can do it now. Or you can do it in half an hour. Either one's fine with me.
Choice,
I just need to know which one it is. And they always choose the later one. But that's fine. When a half an hour is up, I'll go, hey, remember our deal?
Right.
And they'll say,
okay,
oh, we'll do it because they agreed to it earlier.
Okay.
Did you want to
Very quickly, yeah.
So I was just going to make a point that sometimes when you've started, you've done this mirroring and you've listened and you've heard them and they're still digging their heels in and they won't do it. After you've listened well, it's okay to say to them, I've tried really hard to understand this. I really have, and I totally get it. But you know what, honey? It's now a problem. So you either do this or this is the consequence. It's okay to set those limits, and children need limits.
Right.
It's just how you deliver it. It's how you say it.
All right, that's interesting. Now, we have another clip from a mom, and I think this question is very interesting, so let's listen to what she has to say.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I'm a mom of 2 boys, and my question is about communicating with your children. I'd really like to know how one can communicate with boys once they get past a certain age, because I know that they tend to pull away and don't want to talk to their mom, but I'd like to know how I can keep that communication going throughout some time.
Okay, so is there a difference in the way boys talk and listen?
There is. In fact, boys go into that sort of caveman stage when they get to adolescence, and that's when they'll often answer, "Oh no," where they can't even make a sentence. In those moments, again, it's really important to find out what they love and what they enjoy. If you want to make your boys happy, if you want to connect with them, sit down beside them when they're playing a video game. Sit down beside them and say, "Hey, I didn't know you were on this level. I've never actually taken the time to see what this game is about," and talk to them about it and see how excited they get by that. And you don't have to necessarily worry about having big, long conversations with your kids. That puts too much pressure on the parent and too much pressure on the child. If you have little moments where there's been a lovely connection and they walk away going, "Oh, well, that felt kind of good," then they're going to be much more likely to come back. And it could be something very simple. Let's say they open the fridge and go, there's no chocolate milk. So instead of saying, "Well, why don't you do the shopping then?" you can say, "Oh, you know what, I hate that too." When you open the fridge and you expect there's something there and it's not there.
Right.
Then you walk away. Just this lovely little moment where you got each other.
Okay, and that's enough to turn it around?
Well, to build on that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the same for kids of all ages. Short little bursts. If they think they're going to get a big talk every time that you're sitting down, they're going to stay away from talking to you.
Right.
But these short little connections are really what are powerful. And with boys, they still want to be connected to their parents, but they don't want it to show. So you just have to know that they don't want to be seen with you at the mall. They don't want to do it there. And they may not want to do it much at home, but when they're tired, there'll be little moments where you can connect. Absolutely. And parents should just grab a hold of those. But it has to be on their terms. And our teenagers are so different than we were as teenagers. It's a whole different game that you need to learn how to. My husband is adamant against texting. And I keep telling him, I said,
texting.
By the time our children are in their teens, I said, you're losing.
How old are your children?
They're 12,
Okay.
12-year-old twins.
Right.
So he's going to lose a communication option with our children.
Which works for them.
And I said, you're going to have to adapt a little bit.
All right, Catherine, how does communicating well with our children within our families, if we can get that right, how does that help them when they're outside the family, in school, for instance, or with their friends or in their community?
Oh, it is the foundational skill, I think. It's the foundation of parenting, and it's the foundation of anything our children might do. The better they are at communicating, they tend to become more articulate if they're good listeners. And believe me, listening is a skill that is in decline. If we can teach our children to be good listeners, it's going to help them in every aspect of their lives.
Absolutely. And what we know now, too, about the parenting relationship is that it builds resilience. So the closer children are to their parents, the more oriented they are to their parents, the less they'll look to their peers for guidance. It's important to have healthy friendships and relationships with peers, but you want your children to be oriented to you. And when they're strongly oriented to you, that's very protective in terms of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, sexual activity, helping kids to make good choices. That all comes from having a very strong and solid relationship with a predictable and caring caregiver.
And that's why listening at a young age is so important. The child needs to feel, well, if I have something important to say, my parent, my mother, my father are going to give me that time. So then when they're 16, when it's their job to start pulling away, when something important comes up, they still have that connection back and saying, I still need to talk to my parents.
It also gives them terrific social skills with their peers. Because if they're a child that's listened to, they will develop more empathy and have much stronger social skills with their own peers.
Okay, and I'm assuming it would help them with their teachers as well.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, certainly there must be some negotiation that
Well,
goes
and it
on
just,
there
you know,
sometimes.
I just think of it as it just thickens their skin. It just gives them that armor that they need, so when they get kicked out of the sandbox or when they don't get invited to a party, they go, well, you know, that didn't feel very good, but I'm okay. I'm so loved. I'm so understood, I'm so heard that I'm okay. And I don't know what more you could want for your children really than to have that level of resilience.
Well, and it's teachers notice too, children who have a good connection with their parents, the teachers can tell you, they can pick out the kids in the class who have that.
What do they see?
They just see, they can tell that the children
There's
is
a
adjusted.
confidence, shoulders
Confidence.
back, the chin's up. They just seem to be able to take things on the chin a little bit and handle it.
They're better at presentations, especially when a child is expected to take questions from the class. You know, they're very open to that because they're used to being asked questions and listening. They've seen that modeled, so now they can use it in the class. They're good at asking, they tend to ask teachers more questions.
I also don't want parents to think, oh gosh, I haven't been listening to my children. This
Well,
is
that was my
terrible.
question. Is it too late?
No, it's never too late. It's never too late. And it really has to do with neuroplasticity. It actually has to do with the brain. The more you feel listened to, the more your brain, the circuitry of your brain adapts itself to a positive life, to positive experiences, and the better you are at coping. The more you live in an environment where there is fighting and screaming and you're not heard and you're not listened to and you're anxious, the more the brain adapts to that. So there really is such motivation to make sure that you're giving these kids, your children, this experience, and it's just so much better for you as a parent as well. But you can get angry. I mean, it's not. I mean, it happens.
Yes.
It's not
a perfect
damaging your
parenting
child.
thing.
And the lovely part is you can go back and repair. So if you did argue with them, yeah, put your raincoat on, I don't care, and you end up in a big fight, you can go back and say, oh, you remember this morning when I made you put that coat on and you really didn't want to? You can go back and do it.
Okay, that's our last word. Thank you for that. That's reassuring. Very reassuring. My guests have been Jennifer Kolari and Catherine Wakelin. For more information on how to talk to your kids, articles, links, and blogs, please go to tvoparents.com, click on Your Voice and this show topic. On our site, you'll also find a list of upcoming shows, so if you have a question for one of them, send it in. We'll get it to our experts. And if you have a show idea, send that in too. We always want to hear from you. I'm Cheryl Jackson. Thanks for watching.